Everyone was watching Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. People will watch when you walk through trials. They'll watch to see if you stand or if you crumble. They said, we won't defend ourselves. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. And we believe that he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. And I love this next verse. This is my favorite verse. He says, but even if he does not, even if he doesn't, we still refuse to bow down to your golden image. When my dad passed away, I was so hurt and disappointed and angry because I was like, he's 57 years old. He's like young and he's amazing and he's this mighty man of God and he's my dad and pastor and like my best friend. And the whole world seemed to be praying for him and our church was praying for him. And I really felt like he was going to get healed and leave that hospital and come back and preach. And when he didn't, I just remember struggling really hard with my faith. I still believe that Jesus was real. I still believe he died on the cross and rose from the grave. But I really started questioning a lot of what I had been taught. I started questioning faith and I started questioning healing. And I started honestly wondering if some of the miracles I saw growing up were like actors or actresses. I started like really just feeling like maybe this thing had some fakeness to it. And yet I was the college pastor, which sounds terrible. And this story is going to get better. I promise you. You're like, this is cringy. We're leaving right now. He doesn't believe in God. I do. But I need to tell you what I went through. Because I was preaching during this time, but I was bleeding off stage. And I would get up and preach on Tuesday nights at our college service, and then I would just weep and like just discouraged, and people would ask me to come pray for their family members, and I always had an excuse. I wasn't lying. I would look for excuses. But deep down inside, I felt like my prayers didn't work, or maybe the healing message wasn't real. And I was like, I can't pray for your dad. Maybe another pastor can. Maybe someone else can. Sorry. And then I went on a mission trip to Dominican Republic. 4 months after my dad passed, we were in this city in Dominican Republic doing an outdoor crusade. And my mom preached, and I preached, and another guy named Edwin preached. And I remember after preaching the message, I did an altar call for people to get saved, and people got saved. And then they said, Paul, are you going to do a healing call? And I said, no, someone else can do a healing call. Someone else can do a healing call. And they said, why not you? I said, I'm just tired. I just got done preaching. Someone else can do it. And I remember going backstage and I saw people getting healed, and I really was challenged with it. It was like there was this tug of war going on over my heart, and I could feel the enemy just wrestling me. And I was mad when I saw people get healed. I was like, either that's fake, or if it's real, I'm really mad, because why didn't this happen for my dad? And then we left the mission trip, and I got back home, and months went on, and still I just didn't want to go to the hospital. I didn't want to pray for anybody to get healed, because I was like, it was like I had settled for a half version Christianity. Honestly, throw up that picture of that bear behind the cage again. If you have that bear behind the cage, because in a way I felt like I had been caged and shackled by disappointment. And I wanted to believe in the full like Christianity that other people believed in, but I was like, based on what I've experienced, I don't know if that's for everybody. I don't know if that's for me. And then we went to Brazil, and this was 8 or 9 months after my dad passed. This was July of 2010. And I remember being in Brazil. We were ministering in the streets, and at the end of the mission trip, we did a big crusade in Sao Paulo, outdoor crusade. And we partnered with the Power Team. You guys remember the Power Team? That's a whole nother sermon. They like broke bricks and tore phone books. It was wild. Anyways, we were there with the Power Team, and they were doing their stunts, and they were like, all that stuff. And then I get up and preach, and almost 1,000 people gave their hearts to Jesus. And it was awesome. And then the Power Team guys came up to me, and they were like, you're going to do the healing call, right? And I was like, no, you guys can. They were like, why aren't you going to do it? You're the pastor here. I said, listen, I'm really tired. And they were like, I'm not buying that. And I was like, okay, Power Team, just chill out. I was like, Y'all can do it. So I walked backstage and they were like, we're going to break some bricks and let you think about it. So they're out there breaking bricks. I go backstage and I'm sitting with the interpreter Manny. He walks back there and he goes, hey, Paul. I said, yeah, Manny, what's up? He said, you don't know this, but 8 days ago, my wife died. I said, what? How old was she? He said, she was 34 years old. I said, what? How did she die? He said, lymphoma cancer. I said, that's the same cancer my dad died from. I said, Manny, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me? You've been with our team the last 8 days. I said, you should be home, man. You should be grieving. Why are you here? Like, why are you at church things? And why are you worshiping? You should be sad. He said, no, Paul. He said, let me tell you why I'm here. He said, I watched your dad's funeral last year in 2009 on YouTube. He said, I was in Brazil, and I remember people talking about your dad, and I wanted to see who he was, what he was about. He said, the funeral was like 4 hours long. It was really long. I said, I remember. He said, I didn't care what any of those other preachers had to say. I really just wanted to hear what his kids had to say, and his wife, your mom. He said, I listened to your mom, Sharon. She talked. Then I listened to your sisters, your brother. He said, but I was really fixated on what you said. He was like, do you remember what you said? I said, man, it's a blur. Like the last 8 months have been really depressing. I don't remember. He said, you talked about your dad giving you 2 thumbs up. And he said, but then you said something right before you got down. He said, you said that no matter what happened and no matter what happens, you're going to worship Jesus, regardless of answered prayers or not. And he said, did you mean that? I said, yes, I meant it. He said, don't you think these people here tonight deserve a chance to get prayed for, to be healed? I said, yeah, but to be honest, I'm not the right guy to pray for him. My prayers didn't work on my dad. He said, look, isn't it an act of worship towards Jesus to choose to believe that he can still heal, even though it didn't go your way on a prayer you prayed? I said, yeah, I can see that. He said, listen, faith begins where understanding ends. Faith begins when life doesn't make sense. Faith does not begin when all your prayers get answered and your kids get healed and everything works out for your marriage and your family and you get everything you want and the OU Sooners win and all that stuff. Like faith kicks in when nothing goes your way. Faith kicks in when you're like Job and you've walked through grief and loss and trials and the sickness hasn't left and you still lift your hands to worship Jesus. You still show up on a Sunday in October and say, I refuse to bow down to an antichrist spirit. I refuse to stay in my home and settle for a caged Christianity. I choose to worship even though I feel like pain and I feel terrible and life is hard and I'm trying to get through some things and nobody knows what I'm going through. That's when real faith kicks in. And he said, Paul, I need to tell you something. 8 days ago, before my wife died, when she still could talk, before she lost her voice, before the chemo started stealing all of her strength, he said she laid in the hospital bed one of the days before she passed. And with what strength she had left, she grabbed my hand and said, Manny, promise me something. He said, anything, babe. She says, I need you to promise me something. He said, okay, I'll promise you. She says, no, before I say what it is, I need you to promise me that you will do what I'm asking you to do. And he said, okay, what is it? She said, promise me that when I'm gone, he said, stop, you're going to get healed. She said, no. Promise me when I'm gone that you won't stop believing that God is still the healer. Promise me when I'm gone that you won't stop believing he's still the healer. And he goes, babe, I can't. She says, no, you swear to me, Manny. He says, okay, all right, okay. I promise you, babe, I'll still believe God is the healer, even if he doesn't heal you. She says, yes, because he is. He's still the healer. Man, he said, she passed away. And I've been with your team these last 8 days. And I've been waiting for you to give people a chance to get healed. And he said, Paul, I know you're hurting, man. Like we all hurt, dude. I know you walk through grief. We've all walked through grief. He's like, you didn't lose your wife. I lost mine. But you lost your dad. He's like, look, what if we go out on that stage as two broken men, two wounded guys, offering people a chance to receive healing. And maybe we get to see the miracle. Maybe we get to be the miracle. Maybe sometimes you get to see it, sometimes you get to be it. Okay? Now I'm like, well, I don't have an option. I got to go now because I'm crying. So I was like, let's do this. And so we go out on that stage. We're both crying. Power team is done with their brick breaking. We go out there, and I did the worst altar call. It was terrible. I was like, if you want to get healed, I'm not promising anything's going to happen. Like, don't hold me accountable if it doesn't happen. I'm sorry. I don't even know if I should ask you, but if you want prayer for healing, my prayers may not work, but you can come down here. It was really lousy, but people came down. I don't know how many came down, but there was lots. And as they started coming down, I was like, I don't know that I want to do this, because what if it works? And then what if I'm really hurt more, because now it's working for them and it's not working. And now I'm hurting for Manny, and Manny says, stop, man. This isn't about us. Our faith is not based on our experiences. Our faith is not based on what we walked through. Our faith is based in the character of God. Our faith is not based on what you walked through or I walked. Our faith is based in the word that was written thousands of years ago that has stood the test of time. He's good. He's good. He's still good. He's still the healer. We start praying for people. People start getting healed. And with each person that got healed, I had to step back because I could just tell the Holy Spirit was working on me. And I was like, Dad, if you could see this, you'd be so proud of me, man. And I remember just standing there and I was like, God, I just wish he was here. Like, I just wish this thing happened for him too. But I could hear the Lord saying, your dad ran his race. He's in glory now. Like, he's in heaven. And you can't wrestle over things that don't make sense to you. Faith begins where understanding ends. You can live your whole life questioning, bitter, angry, spiritually sick because you don't understand why things went the way they did. Or you can choose to give it to God. And when you do, God starts healing you on the inside. And with each person we prayed for, I could feel like God was mending my heart. And then I felt called to pray for people with cancer. And I was like, if you have cancer, come down to the altar. And Manny looked at me, he was like, bro. I was like, I know, we got to do this though. I didn't want to look at him. I could just feel him looking at me. And so he says it in Portuguese, and people start coming down. And y'all, people got healed that night. People started getting healed on the spot of all kinds of sickness and disease. A week later, we got reports from pastors saying people who got prayed for cancer. Someone got healed of a tumor dissolving at the altar, a tumor dissolved. But then a week later, they said people who got prayed for cancer went to their doctors and cancer had disappeared. Now, I'm not saying it happens for every single person. You can already hear the cages inside of me trying to talk. But here's what I'm saying. God is still the healer. He's still the Redeemer. He's still the Savior. He's still worthy of your worship. Even if he doesn't do it for you, he's still worthy. Even if he doesn't, he still deserves praise. And I refuse to bow to a partial Christianity. I refuse to bow to a half-hearted, lukewarm Christianity. I choose to stand. Even if it doesn't make sense to you or me, I choose to stand on the Word of God. I choose to stand on the character of God. He's faithful. He's faithful. He's still worthy. He's still good. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel. He's still Jehovah. He's still Yahweh. Elohim. He's still peace. He is Jehovah Shalom. He is Jehovah Nisi. He is Jehovah Rapha. He is my healer. He is my shepherd. I can just see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego standing in front of the king. And they're looking at the king. And they're like, look, you can kill us, but to live is Christ and to die is gain. We win either way. It was like they were committed to this because they would rather live for the king of all the world than bow to a king that was temporarily in place of position. And the king threw them in the fire. He said, fine, you're going in. Talk about unsafe faith. God didn't deliver them from having to walk through the fire. But while they were in the fire, I can hear Oral Roberts talking about the fourth man in the fire. While they were in the fire, bound up, firmly tied, the king jumped to his feet in verse 24. And he said, didn't we throw just 3 men into that fire? They said, yes, your majesty. He said, look, I see a 4th man walking with them in the fire, unbound, unharmed, and he looks like God himself. Nebuchadnezzar said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out of the fire. When they came out of the fire, they didn't even smell like smoke. Their robes were not even scorched. And Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in God. Look at that. He says they trusted in their God. And they defied the king's command. And they were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any God except their own God. I want to just pray for you today.